So today we are talking about raising emotionally intelligent children. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna share a screen with you guys. And I already told you guys who we are, what we do. And so let's just talk about, just get right into it. Why is emotional intelligence important? And to be honest with you, we could call this talk anything. We could call it, how do you make sure your child is successful in life? How do you make sure your child is courageous? How do you know how to raise resilient children? How to raise leaders? How to raise people who know how to have good relationships? Because at the root of all of that is emotional intelligence. So I'm going to first tell you why it's important. What are the 4 core skills? Although there are people who say there's 5, but I just narrowed it down to 4 because it's easier. But motivation is one of them that I don't necessarily go too much into. And then I'm going to talk about emotion coaching, and I'm using Gottman's model. So this is not something I came up with, but John Gottman came up with this 5-step model, which I thought was a really good frame. I will also add my 2 cents to it, just because I can't help it. But I like the frame of the 5-step model and the mindset that he's coming at it with. And so that's what we will talk about. So let's talk about why it's important. So this is John Gottman. He's the guy that I just mentioned. So in the last decade or so, science has discovered a tremendous amount about the role of emotions in our lives. Researchers have found that even more than IQ, your emotional awareness and ability to handle feelings will determine your success and happiness in all walks of life, including your family relationships. And if you think about it, where do we learn this stuff? Where do you learn how to have emotions, how to deal with emotions, how to cope with emotions? Family is our first school of emotional learning. What our parents did with us, how our parents taught us about emotions, all of this operates from all of this is actually teaching us how to be. If there's a death in the family and I show a stiff upper lip and everybody commends me on how brave I'm being and she's got it so put together, and this is all that my children are seeing, that, okay, this is how you deal with grief. You don't cry, you put on a brave face, you don't feel your feelings, you keep it all in. Now there's a lesson that is being learned by really young children and adolescents about how you face grief. But if I show them that I cry and I ache and I go through grief and I process that grief and I, metabolize and digest and cope with and manage, if I'm moving with it rather than keeping it stuck inside of me, I'm also teaching my children something. And so what do we teach our children is about emotions, is how we actually are coping with that. And so it is important, and where we learn it is going to be the family system. It's going to be the mother, the father, and the primary caregivers. And I will tell you how we actually really get in the way. So Goleman, who wrote a lot about emotional intelligence, he talked about it being the sine qua non of leadership. Without it, a person can have the best training in the world, the best schools, and have an incisive and analytical mind and an endless supply of smart ideas, but he will not make a great leader. And that's kind of really what we want, right? We want our children to have, to make a difference in the world, to live their full potential, to be happy. This is what we want for our children. And the research again and again is pointing in the direction of emotional intelligence. It plays an increasingly important role in the highest levels of companies where differences in technical skills are of negligible importance. And Mark Beckett from Yale actually says, he teaches about emotional intelligence. He wrote a book called Permission to Feel, and I highly recommend this book. It also is in one of my highlights in my Instagram account, but I would highly recommend that you look at that book. And he talks about how students at Yale are like, well, we got this far and we didn't have any emotional intelligence coaching or any emotional intelligence learning. And he said, you might have gotten into Yale without emotional intelligence, but getting out is going to be a whole other story. And what happens to you once you get out is going to be a whole other story. So you really, as life gets more and more complicated, you are going to get more and more challenged. And the more you are able to have emotional intelligence and emotional, regulation, all of the things that fall under emotional intelligence, the more you are able to cope with what life brings to you. And we all know that life can throw lots of different curveballs. And then the Carnegie Institute of Technology actually stated that 85% of your financial success is also due to skills in human engineering, your personality, your ability to communicate, negotiate, to lead. Only 15% is due to technical skills. So yeah, while we want our children to get into the best companies, we don't want them to just stay stagnant. We want them to move up. We want them to negotiate. We want them to, confront, draw boundaries, be at that, be able to speak up for themselves. And that does require you being able to navigate your own emotions and then use and harness the energy of those emotions to push through life and ask for what you deserve, ask for what you need. So emotional intelligence, just going to, forget the leadership and all of that. What about just kids? What about now? Well, we know from all the science that emotionally intelligent children have better health. They have better academics. They have less behavior problems. They get along better with their peers. They're more resilient because they're able to bounce back. They don't deteriorate under stress, and they live longer. We just know all these longitudinal studies have been done. And think about it, guys, when it comes to academics, our attention is a very sensitive system. You've been through it. There are times where you really need to get something done, and it could be something around the house or it could be something at work. And then, you got in a fight with your partner, or something is bothering you about your family, and you just can't focus, right? And this is an adult. We know what we need to do. We have a more fully developed frontal lobe, but we still struggle. So with kids who don't have a fully developed functioning frontal lobe, they really get impacted by stress a lot more. And it needs to be deliberately taught to them. And this is one of my agendas. I'll say it again and again, anywhere I can, that the academic system is failing our children because it is not equipping them with these life skills that they need. While I, as a parent, can teach them how to be with feelings, it also needs to be taught in a curriculum-like setting, because that is the seriousness with which we need to take emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, stress management, communication, because these are the skills that are needed. And we know from World Economic Forum, and this is a little bit older, but if you look at the 2022, because they usually project every 2 or 5 years, you look that you don't see reading and writing and math and all of that other stuff in the skills that are needed for jobs in the future. We need things like critical thinking and creativity and people management and leadership and emotional intelligence, decision making. None of this stuff is being taught. And so we need to be very deliberate as parents by setting a very intentional agenda about teaching this stuff to our children, by creating opportunities in our life to say, okay, here's a problem, what are we going to do with that? Or here's an emotion, how are we going to manage that or cope with that or process that, rather than, just shoot for happiness all the time. This is not about being happy all the time. This is knowing how to navigate life and all that life throws at us. That is what emotional intelligence is. And so these are the core skills that are needed for emotional intelligence. Sorry for the weird looking chart. But we'll do a better job next time, but it's a little bit squished looking. But number one is empathy. And all the research is showing that empathy is on the decline. Why is empathy on the decline? Because there's usually a phone between me and you, and everybody's looking down, and no one is looking at each other, and no one is feeling each other, and there are no mirror neurons being fired. I can't feel your pain. I can't connect with you. And so being sensitive to the nuances of each other, this is what you're going to need in order to influence and adapt. And you all know those really sensitive people, right? They can pick up energy in a room and move and gravitate towards that energy and manipulate that energy to make it more positive, or to, to get people connected. They have a lot more charisma. And so there's a skill in treating people according to their emotional reaction and saying, okay, this person is starting to look a little bit upset. Let me move in now to find a way to diffuse the situation. All that requires empathy. Empathy on the decline. Another book that I would recommend is Narcissism Epidemic. Now, in this book, and she's had another, more recent additions to this book, she basically talks about how we are actually becoming more and more narcissistic in our demeanor, not full-blown narcissistic personality disorder, but just self-absorbed and self-oriented. Now, if you think about the world, I mean, it's not like a far shot here where we're saying, oh, everybody's self-absorbed. From the moment you wake up, you are thinking about what your next post is going to be, thinking about how many likes you got, thinking about, my iPhone, my iMessage, my iPad, my iMac, like I. And this is the world that our children have just been born into. And so you can't blame them for being so self-oriented and so self-absorbed, but we can find a way to make the world more accessible to them and say, what are you going to do with the gifts you have been given to make this world a better place? But in order for them to be activated, by the way, human beings were generally empathetic. That's why you see someone hurting and inside you cringe and you hurt in physical body parts. That's because we have mirror neurons and we can feel each other's pain. Our pain centers actually get activated when we see other people get hurt in some way. So we are just attuned, our hard wiring is this. We just have to look up from our phone and actually connect with the world. The second thing, and I will say it again and again every day of my life, that self-awareness is going to be absolutely critical for self-confidence, for realistic self-assessment, for a sense of humor, because you can see your light, you can see your darkness, you can see the things you're working on, you can see the things that you are really great at. You can see, okay, these people make me a little bit like this, these people make me a little bit like this, I need to be more like this and with these people. So you just have more awareness. You are in control. You are in the driver's seat rather than the emotions and the environment dictating where you're going to go and how you're going to feel. Self-regulation, absolutely critical, absolutely not happening in the world today. A kid throws a tantrum, guess what we give them? You throw a tantrum, guess what you look at? You immediately move out of that place and you move into a numbing behavior. This is a numbing behavior. This is a distracting behavior. Now, I'm not saying that in some situations that is not okay. Of course, in some situations where you're like, overly flooded and you don't have the energy or the resources necessarily to calm your center down, but you cannot rely on a device outside of you to find your calm again. You need to be able to regulate and redirect disruptive impulses and moods. Suspend the judgment, increase the pause between thought, reaction, so you can actually be responsive rather than reactive. And then the next thing you know, you shoot something out at somebody and it's coming out of a very reactive space rather than a valued centered space. And we are all guilty of this. All of us are weak in this muscle because all of us would rather be distracted or use numbing behaviors because it is easy. When COVID hit, when all of these things, we'd rather just be, okay, give me the Netflix, give me the alcohol, give me the Instagram, give me the social media, give me this, so I don't have to think about my own stuff. And all the things that used to help me get distracted, like going out to restaurants, traveling, partying, et cetera, socializing, all of these things taken away from me, all of a sudden I'm left with my own self. And that was very overwhelming for people, and the uncertainty of the future. So uncertainty of the future, all my inner voices, and guess what we all did? All the streaming went up, all the Zooming went up, everybody just gravitated towards screen, and we moved into that behavior. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm with you on Zoom right now. I'm saying it's a very good thing. I'm just saying that if that's the only thing that is in your toolbox of coping and regulation, then we're going to need to build that up a little bit. Um, when you are more self-regulated, you are more trustworthy, you have more integrity, you can be okay with a little bit of ambiguity. I don't know what's going to happen, but you know what? I have the center, an anchor inside of myself rather than outside of myself. I'm not worried that if my phone battery dies and I'm going to lose my mind, like, or if Wi-Fi goes out and, it shuts down, like what's going to happen to me? So you act with a lot more trust in yourself. And people know that you're not like this emotionally volatile, reactive person, including your children. And so this is what self-regulation looks like in parents too, by the way. This is not the only thing you're going to do. You're not going to just make your kids more self-regulated. I think we need to start with ourselves. And then lastly, social skills, the ability to move between. So I want you to think about emotional intelligence as me, my emotions, and what I do with them, self-regulation and self-awareness. My emotions, self-awareness, what I do with them, regulation. Other awareness, this is about empathy. I'm looking at you, I'm feeling you, I'm knowing you, I've got you. And then what I do with that is social skills. So me, myself, other, and in the space between. So just think about it as these four things. And when this is good, it all seems to move. And the fifth thing that people usually talk about when it comes to emotional intelligence is motivation. And so I believe that we just, no one tells a little baby, okay, now it's time for you to walk. Okay, now it's time for you to roll over. I believe in inherent motivation. I just believe that there are things that happen that get in the way of us to self-actualize. But I believe that if these things are in place, that children will naturally gravitate towards what drives them, what motivates them. But when they can't regulate, when they're not self-aware, when they are being influenced by social media and not actually through their own inner compass, that's when we run into problems. That's when they have issues with confidence and esteem and and feeling like they're lonely. They're not able to connect to themselves or to each other. So obviously these are the core skills. And I'm just going to say this, and I think some of you guys might have seen our Instagram live on Smart Heart board game that I did last week with Christine. So Christine and I have created the Smart Heart board game. So the Smart Heart board game has been around for almost 7-8 years, but we created version 2.0 together. So my input was in version 2.0, and it will be available in at the Lighthouse and online in the coming weeks. And so that actually is absolutely anchored in these four principles. The questions, the feelings, all of that is anchored in that. So something for you guys to think about is like, okay, well, where do I get started? That board game would be a good place, especially for kids under 11. It actually is a great, I play it with everybody in my family, but you can play it with children under 11. So before I move on to other things, I want you to think about, think about emotions in your inner world. And I didn't share the story with you guys earlier, but when I first started doing parenting talks, okay, first I was expecting my first child. So I have 4 children. I was expecting my first child 16 years ago. And I remember being so anxious because that's just how I am. I'm like, oh, I need to know everything about everything when it comes to parenting. And I'm going to do everything my mother didn't do and everything my mother did do. And like, for me, it was really about, how am I going to be the very best parent? And how am I going to, have it be anchored in science and research? So I read and read and read and read, and I ended up doing my dissertation in parenting. And so my love affair with parenting began very, very long ago. And then I've had 4 children to really make me very humble and know that whatever is in the books or whatever I'm saying might not pertain to every single one of your children. But the older I got, the wiser I got, the more I realized, first of all, I am far more stricter than my mom. I always used to say that I would be far more lenient. No, my mom got nothing on me when it comes to certain things. The second thing I learned was that parenting is an inside job. You focus on the parent and the parenting becomes easier. So everything I'm saying to you guys right now, this is not about what you go off and do with your children. This is about what you need to do within yourself first. Do you have self-awareness? Do you have emotional regulation? Do you know what to do with your sadness and your anger and your grief and your heartbreak and your betrayal? And do you know what to do? How are we to teach our children when we are completely rattled and moving into numbing behaviors, so we don't have to feel? But then we want our children to be emotionally intelligent so they can be successful in life. It doesn't work that way. And so I learned this, that I needed to work on myself. And the more I worked on myself, the easier the other stuff got. And I'm not saying that it's easy for me to parent 3 teenagers at this point, and a 5-year-old, but I will say that it keeps me very anchored in my position and in my values. And I know that I am coaching them with self-awareness and self-regulation at the center of it all, while I expose them to their social responsibility. So I want you to think about, what did your parents do when you were sad, when you were angry? Was it a natural thing, or was it like a shaming moment? You know, she's so out of control. She has, you know, you can be so selfish. You know, you are so explosive. Was fear considered, come on, be a big boy? Was it considered a sign of cowardice, or, oh, you need to be a, you know, you're such a wimp. Come on, toughen up, conquer your fears, rather than actually be sensitive to that and say, okay, it's very normal to be afraid. And you know what? It takes courage to face your fears. How were you actually treated when you had these types of emotions? Did they offer you guidance? Did they help you solve problems? Was it viewed as, you know, was anger viewed as destructive? I'm telling you, I've been a psychologist for more years than I can count now, but I have always asked this question with kids whenever I've worked with a kid, just because I want to know where their radar is, and I want to know what kind of stuff, you know, they might be learning from home, from their parents. And I say, is anger good or bad? I have not found a single child, not a single child in all the work that I did with children. And even like, you know, if I walk, you know, and ask my nieces, nephew, and nobody, if I say, is anger good or bad? Majority of the 100% actually have said anger is bad. Anger is bad because that is what we are taught. We are not taught that anger is actually a very useful emotion. It tells you that a line has been crossed. It tells you that you need to stand up for something, whether it's a social injustice or whether it's a personal injustice, but it's telling you that you need to do something. It mobilizes you, it gives you energy, but we don't know what to do with that. So we end up, you know, being destructive to self or other or our property. And then we feel shame, but no one teaches us these things. And then obviously with this last question, were your feelings concealed? Were they dismissed? Were they seen as unproductive, frivolous, dangerous, self-indulgent? I can tell you, I was called the sensitive one. You're too sensitive. You're so sensitive. And it was not a good thing. It was not like, they were like, wow, she's so sensitive. No, it was like, oh, God, she's so sensitive. And they called me crocodile tears because everything made me cry. And I had these big tears that would come out of my eyes. And you know what? That's just who I was. And, you know, but it was a very shaming experience for me. I was also a very highly sensitive child. And so I felt other people's pain. I cried when they cried. I felt when they felt. I felt when I felt. And so if you have highly sensitive children, you have even more of a duty to teach them emotional intelligence, because they are not only feeling their own emotions to such high intensity, they're feeling the world's emotions with such high intensity. And that is just chaos on the inside, which could look like ADHD. It could look like sensory processing. It could look like behavioral disorders. It could look like defiance. It could look like lots of things, but it actually is them saying, it's too much. The world is too much for me. It's too big. The emotions are too big. So let's see. let's talk about some of the styles, and I think you might find yourself in one of these. And so parenting styles for emotions. So there's 4 different styles. I'm going to start in the upper right, which is the disapproving one. This is the easy one, right? Not a lot of disapproving parents might be on here because those are not the ones that usually come to parenting talks. Usually it's the ones that really want to get this parenting thing right. But the disapproving one is actually the one which you imagine what that means. You know, it judges, it criticizes. They, you know, come on, toughen up, be a man, be a boy, you know, the world is too tough. You can't be a sissy, like that kind of stuff. This is very critical. And they believe that if you have negative emotions or difficult emotions, fear, anger, sadness, grief is a sign of bad character traits. It's just that you are not tough enough and you are too sensitive and you are basically a sissy and you're not going to make it in this world. This is the disapproving parent. There are not that many of these on this chat, but you know what? They're out there and you know who you are. And this is kind of how we were raised, you know, stiff upper lip, come on, you know, pick yourself up by your boots and get on with it. That is the disapproving parent. Disapproving of emotions. I'm not saying disapproving entirely. They could be very loving and they feed you and they make your dreams come true. But when emotions come on, toughen up. This is not how we act. This is not how we are. We, as a family, we take it on. Stiff upper lip type of thing. Another set of parents, I'm now going diagonal here, is the laissez-faire parent. This is all emotions are good. You want to throw a tantrum, sweetheart, I love you. And you want to kick me and I love you. And you want to slap me and it's okay. They just feel and feel and feel, and every feeling is good and every feeling is acceptable and every feeling needs to be accepted in its full capacity, in its full entirety. And feelings that result in negative behaviors, as long as they are feeling the feeling, it's okay, we'll tolerate the negative behavior. There is zero guidance on that. There's zero limits. It's uncontained emotions. So this kid is just all over the place because there is no problem solving going on. There is no guidance about limits, that anger is okay, but throwing things at your aunt is not okay. And you know, it's you, I 100% I'm with you. I sit with you. I know you're so sad about not being invited to your friend's party, and then sitting with them in that. But you know what? You know, sending rude messages on social media to her and her friends, not okay. This is not, you know, not going to be how we do it. But sitting first, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. So there is boundaries to these behaviors, and those boundaries, here's a hint, guys, always anchor them in a value and you will never lose your way. For me, I read hundreds of books on parenting and it was more confusing. This one said this one said that, do this one and do that one. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Move it right into the values and you will never, ever lose your way. Roy Disney actually said that if you know what your values are, you will always know how to make a decision. So what should I say to my child who's coming to me with this? What's the value in question? Ask yourself that. And that will be where you set the boundary. That will be the compass with which you problem solve. And so, and I will tell you when to problem solve. You don't problem solve right away, but that will be the limit that you set. So emotions are okay, but behaviors need guidance and limit. But these parents are not doing that. Then the third one in the upper left-hand corner, this is where most of us are. I know people are like, what? I thought I was an emotion coach. No, most of us are actually very dismissive of emotions. We use distractions to shut down our child. We believe that these feelings that can be irrational, they don't count. They believe negative emotions are toxic. Negative emotions mean that I'm a bad parent. If my daughter is sad, that means I did something wrong. If my daughter is anxious, that means I failed as a parent. Dismissive parents can sound like this. Oh, honey, you look so sad. Come on, give mama a smile. Yeah, that was dismissing. didn't sound dismissing, but look, dismissing of feelings, disapproving of feelings, laissez-faire about feelings, emotion coaching about feelings. This is what you need to think about. How many times have you done this? Well, actually, I'll tell you a story about my daughter. And she came to me. We had a pool out in our garden, and she had already changed into her pajamas. And I'm in the kitchen, I'm making my salad. She comes in and she said, I am so angry. She's 5 years old. Ismail threw water on my pajamas. I look back and I say, oh, come on, honey, it's just water. It'll dry. That was a dismissing comment. But I caught myself, thank God, because it happens 100 times a day where we are dismissing this one and dismissing that one because we just don't take the time out to say, okay, tell me what happened. And so I caught myself in that one, and I went to her and said, okay, you are really angry about this. Yeah, I'm angry because I changed my pajamas and I really wanted to sleep in the unicorn pajamas and now I have to. And so I said, yeah, it can be really upsetting when, people don't think about these things when they're splashing water on you. He was in the pool. He didn't, think about you being outside. That was not considerate. That hurt you. That hurt your feelings. We did all of that. And then I said, okay, what can we do about this? How can we solve this problem? Do you have any ideas? And she said, okay, well, I could just put my pajamas out to dry and then I can wear them before I go to bed. Great idea. Let's do that. And problem was solved. She felt like I connected with her. But this is really about, can I feel what you feel rather than can I help you stop feeling the feeling? Because if I can help you feel what you feel, then you will be better at feeling what you feel rather than trying to move yourself out. Also, how many of you have done this before? Oh, Mom, I had a really bad day at work. Come on, honey, let's go get some ice cream. That'll make you feel better. And then we wonder why we have an obesity epidemic. And then we wonder why Bridget Jones and everybody in their movies is actually going for the ice cream, container when they're in a low, sad mood, is because we are conditioned. You have a bad day, eat sugar, it makes you feel better. Or somebody feed us, so let me make you a sandwich, or let me cook your favorite meal. All of a sudden, we connect negative feelings to food. And then we eat emotionally. We numb ourselves using food. So this is how, as parents, we are dismissing our children's feelings and our own. We do this to ourselves all the time. Oh God, I'm really worried about, what the summer is going to look like. Okay, I don't want to think about this. Okay, what are we going to watch for Netflix? The last one is emotions coaching. Accept that emotions are expressions from the child, but we don't accept all behavior. There's a line here, you cross that line, feelings are okay, behavior needs to be managed. See the world of negative emotions as an important arena for parenting, and they're aware of the values of his or her emotions. So you know where you're operating from, you know your own stuff, you know that you can be enraged, but shouting and screaming, not okay. This is what emotion coaching is going to look like. And you might need to first emotion coach yourself before you're going to try to do this with your kids, because they are going to, or you all do it together, but don't try to do something with them that you don't do. Children do as you do, not as you say. Okay. What are we going to do about this? 5 steps. Let me just check on time. Oh, here's my phone. I've been swinging this thing around a little bit. Okay, we're still good on time. Oh, I forgot we started at 9:30. I was like, oh, okay. So, let's see, how do you become your child's life coach? So I changed this a little bit today. It usually is emotions coach, but you know what? This is about life. How do you do life? If you know how to do emotions, you know how to do life, because that is it. Even procrastination. Now we know from the science of procrastination that it's either distraction or it's actually that you can't regulate your anxiety. And so you keep putting the perfectionism kicks in. Everything in life has to do with how good you are navigating your emotions. They are the royal road. You know, Freud used to say that the royal road to the psyche is through dreams, something to that effect. And I say the royal road to yourself is your emotions. They will guide you. It's like your spirit telling you, this is okay, this is not okay. You love this, you don't love this. If you listen to your emotions and you see them as messengers, all of a sudden it becomes a whole lot of knowledge about yourself, about what you want, about what you need to skill up on, about what you need to work on, all of a sudden becomes available to you. Step 1. Okay, become aware of your child's emotions. Now this, you know, parents were asked by John Gottman, when was the last time your child had a negative feeling? And parents are like, oh, no, not many times. I mean, you know, maybe 2 years ago when grandma died, there was a negative feeling. And, you know, yeah, when we moved, she experienced some distress, but for the most part, no. And if you ask the child that question, they, you know, they said like 2 p.m. yesterday, like, or 2 p.m. this afternoon, like they felt negative emotions all the time. And so what we as parents have done, and I speak about this a little bit later, is about emotional granularity, is that we only pick up the big emotions. And we ourselves are drowning in so much emotion that the child, when they're flooded and they're acting out and they're failing school and they're talking back and they're breaking things, only then we are like, oh, we need to pay attention to this kid. Like something's going on with this child that we need to pay attention to, right? So we are not attuned. We are not sensitive. We've lost our ability to sense things in our kids. You can't pick up the small stuff. You only wait for the big stuff. Guess what? You're only going to get the big stuff. So we need to be able to be a lot more nuanced and be a lot more aware of our children. How do you do that? You make sure your container is empty for you to be able to feel the other person's feeling, right? You can't be full of your own stuff and then expect yourself to be able to contain your child. And so this needs to be where you learn to digest and metabolize and process and release and cope with your own stuff. And being emotionally aware is a lifelong process. There's no like, hi, I'm an emotionally aware person. It doesn't happen like that. I've been working on emotional awareness for 2 decades now, and I can still say there is so much more I learn about myself, so much I learn about my triggers. But you get to a place where you're like, yeah, I'm good. Of course, if I want to get to like Jedi level, I'm going to keep working on it. But at this point, I am in the warrior state where I can say, yeah, okay, I'm good. I have a good command of my emotions. I'm nuanced. I can pick up on my kids. I can pick up on my mom. I can pick up on the people around me. And I can use that to guide my conversations. So that's going to be very important. Sorry for the typo there, guys. Put yourself in their heart and experience the feeling there. And when I said put yourself in their heart, I don't want you to put yourself in their shoes. Shoes you can take out and, you know, remove. I really want you to get inside them and say, I want to know what it feels like to have wet pajamas that are your favorite pajamas, and you're about to, like, you know, you really were looking forward to these coming back from the laundry and wanting to sleep in them and have sweet unicorn dreams. And then your brother comes along and splashes you, and there is a possibility that you might not be able to sleep in the unicorn pajamas. Wow. For a 5-year-old, it doesn't get worse than that. For my age, it's like, come on, man, you got like 15 other pajamas. No, be the 5-year-old, be the 12-year-old, be the 17-year-old. Feel the feeling as you were 17, not as you are in this age with what you know and your knowledge. That knowledge you are going to use, because that knowledge is going to be the container. This container is holding the child. They feel your steadiness because you know everything is going to be okay, but you don't move into everything is going to be okay until you feel fully what that feels like. And so step 2 of this program is that you recognize that negative emotions are an opportunity for you to teach them something. This is not how do we quickly move you out? And I actually don't like this word negative, so I'm going to take that word negative out. Negative experiences are not really negative. Actually, they're difficult, right? Difficult, adverse experiences are not there just for us to get through it. Come on, honey, we're going to get through COVID. No. What are we going to get from this? What are we going to learn about ourselves from this? How are we going to be wiser? How are we going to let it change us in some way? So when we come out of this thing, we have actually gone through it and not try to go around it and move out. We actually went through it. And so this is where teaching and learning and processing and talking about these things, wow, you did this, and wow, you guys are really champions of, online schooling, or you guys have been so flexible this year. One day you're here, one day you're there. Like, these are the things we want to highlight in our children. We don't just want to like, oh, look, but you know what? You always wanted to stay home. Like, we don't want to focus on the positive. We don't want to focus only on the positive. Let me tell you what that looks like. Oh, mom, I really am so sad about leaving this country. I'm so sad about leaving this country. And all my friends are here, and I'm just like, I really don't want to move to, I don't know, pick a country, France. I really don't want to. I don't want to go back home. I don't want that. This is my home. And this is the parent. Well, you know what, honey, I know this is hard for you, but look at all the wonderful things. We're going to have our family close. The weather is better. Immediately, you see what you did. You move them out of, oh, I know, but. So you didn't actually see that this was an experience that you could actually teach them on how do you cope with loss and grief and losing and moving and saying goodbye with honor and grace. This was an opportunity. You missed it altogether because you're so focused on the positive thinking, and let's just focus on the positive, and let's just focus on the positive. We don't want to do that. The most important step is step 3. By the way, I'm telling you, this is the hardest step for children, including myself being the 5th person. It is the hardest thing to do because everything in our world tells us that negative feelings or difficult feelings are something we must fight. We must fight our depression. We must conquer our anxiety. We must conquer our fears. Okay, chill. Like, everybody, like, let's just first understand our fears. Let's just try to get to where this came from. We don't have this curious approach to our emotions and our feelings. We don't have a curious approach to life. It's just something we have to get through and a problem that has to be solved. So immediately we note the problem, we move into problem solving, but we forget like there was a whole message here that came. And it's almost like, the messages are like Deliveroo guys, and, they are Uber Eats or something, and they come with your food and they come with a message. And like, they ring the doorbell, you open the door and you slam the door and you run back home inside because there's a stranger at your door. But it's like, no, but I have something here for you. Can you please just take this? But you're like, well, I didn't order it. I don't want it. Slam the door. But it could be something your friend sent you, or something your husband or, wife or your child ordered, but you don't actually listen to the message. The feelings are messengers. We must listen to the message fully. This is what it sounds like. Oh, mom, I'm really finding this online thing to be just, I can't do this. Okay, tell me about that. You sound really overwhelmed. The daughter's talking. That does sound hard. How else, what else have you been feeling? And then you unpack it, and the who, what, where, when, why, how. As an investigator of her story, I want to know, since when have you felt this way? Has it always been this way? Does it always feel like this? Is it in all the classes you feel overwhelmed? Is there something that you feel that you do have under control? Are Tuesdays worse than Thursdays? I want to unpack the whole story of her emotions and the ups and the downs and the good and the bad, and use words to reflect back. Wow, that is hard. And man, you guys are having to flex muscles we didn't even know we had, rather than, well, you know what? I would have been like a genius if I had everything you guys did. Be so lucky that you guys have computers. You know what? There's people in this world that don't have computers. There are people in this world that don't have the ability to go to school, and you guys go to the top schools in the world. You can hear it. Everybody can hear it. They're like, oh, shoot, I think I did say that to my kids. I'm not saying you don't say that to your kids. You just don't say it now. They need to know that you see and feel how they feel. And you say, man, this is hard stuff. This is so hard. And that's it. We don't have to fix it. We don't have to know it. This is what we call an attuned witness, an attuned, compassionate witness, where you are the regulator. You're holding their emotion and you're saying, I got you. This is going to be okay. I see you're in pain. I see you're suffering. I see your struggle. I hear your sadness. I hear your grief. It is sad. And these days you will never get back again. You won't be able to attend your, high school dance, and you are missing out on a whole year of sports. And that is really hard. And I think this is the hardest thing for teenagers to go through. I think all of us are managing, but teenagers and young adults are really missing out. And I feel it. I feel your pain. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, she gets it. You know what most people used to say when I used to work with teenagers and children? I said, have you tried talking to your parents? Oh, they don't understand. They just keep telling me I should be grateful for what I have. Number one thing that kids said about parents. So if you're one of those, it's okay to be grateful, but it's not okay to move into gratitude right away. We will move into gratitude, but it is important to feel the feeling and just sit in it. And I promise you, they move out of that feeling on their own. If you just sit quietly, and they'll say, oh, anyways, yeah, I better get back to work. And that's what they do. Okay, well, before you get back to work, maybe we can come up with some solutions. Like, is there something we can do to make this experience not as daunting and not as lonely? What are you really missing? Oh, I really miss hanging out with my friends. What if we had an outdoor, lunch where you guys could all sit together and emotionally distance within your school, people that are staying home in your quarantine pod or whatever. Maybe we have some of those people come over, and all of a sudden you can then have problem solving. But you sit and you sit and you sit with your ears, with your eyes, with your undivided attention, with your heart. This is the Chinese symbol for listen. I studied Chinese when I was at University of Michigan in my undergrad, and I was fascinated by their symbols. And this symbol is basically saying, this is how you listen. Not like this, not like this, not like, oh, look, no. Listening does not require you opening your mouth. Listening just means asking and reflecting. Don't ask why, because it's not helpful. Why do you think you're feeling that way? It might not be helpful. Where are you feeling? How are you feeling? How intense is that feeling? Where in the body is that feeling? Is that feeling there all the time? That might be more helpful for them. And then don't ask questions that you already know the answer to, because kids can pick up on that. And don't ask questions that you're like guiding them. Well, have you thought about? No. Don't ask questions that are leading and that you know the answers to, because kids can pick up on that stuff. Number 4, it's going to be very, very important that you label their emotions. So this is part of number 3. So while you're listening to them and they're like, I'm just so stressed. Wow, you sound like you're feeling really overwhelmed, reflecting a feeling. Yeah, so she used stressed, I used overwhelmed. You can also use stress. Yeah, you're really stressed right now. You feel really overwhelmed. Yeah, there's one of these teachers, like she always like gives homework on the last minute. Oof, that sounds really frustrating. I'm labeling. She's giving me an experience. I'm labeling the feeling. She's giving me the experience. I'm labeling the feeling. The more sophisticated and nuanced I am, the more I will be able to label her feeling. If she comes and tells me, you know what, my friend did this to me and she said these things about me to this other girl, and I say, oof, that's so hurtful, right? That's painful. That's one way of saying it. But wow, that feels like a betrayal. I would feel really betrayed if that happened. Betrayed and hurt right? There's different degrees of pain you can experience from a friend. And so giving them the nuanced, which is what emotional granularity is about. And emotional granularity, I'm going to get right back to that. But when you label the feeling, there's something that happens in the right brain and the left brain. Right brain is all about our emotions, and the left brain is our logic and our ability to sort of problem solve and decision making, etc. So what happens is when you give language to this experience, it sends all these soothing chemicals within to your system, and you now feel under control. If you can name it, you can tame it, is what Daniel Siegel says. Name it to tame it. When you feel really overwhelmed and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? How am I going to name your feeling? Immediately you'll be like, okay, if it's anxiety, I think I got this. If it's overwhelm, I think I got this. Frustration, betrayal, sadness, grief, what is it that you're feeling? When you name it, you tame it. It now feels manageable. It helps to soothe their nervous system down, but you can't be like freaking out on the inside and be like, honey, everything is going to be okay. No, they can sense that. You have to be an attuned, steady witness where you're like, you feel really overwhelmed by this. You are so stressed by this. This sounds like it's very disruptive to the way you had imagined your life. It feels like you're on top of the world. You seemed really surprised by this. You seemed really agitated today. You seem really on edge. These are all ways you're describing different feelings. And the goal we want for our children in childhood, before they go off to college, is emotional granularity. So emotional granularity is basically science that, research that came out of Lisa Barrett. And she basically categorized people as two types of people when it comes to emotions. There is emotional clumpers and there is emotionally granular people. And people who were emotionally granular were able to go to a very high degree of specificity and precision in how they described their emotion. Now, if you look on this chart, all of these feelings have something to do with anxiety. Most people say, oh my God, I'm so anxious, I'm so anxious, I'm so anxious, I'm so anxious. But you know what? Before you got to anxious, there was something else that happened. There was a lower level tightness in your chest. Maybe you were uneasy, then you apprehensive, maybe you were concerned, maybe you felt a little bit jittery, maybe you felt worked up, maybe you were nervous, maybe you were worried, scared, afraid, anxious, fearful, panicked. The more granular you are, the more you're able to catch it early. So it's like a mind-body connection. The second I have a word for something, somewhere in my body, I'll pick it up. It's almost like a spotlight shines the second I have a word for it. So if I have a word for concerned rather than just panicked, immediately when my body starts to feel concerned, the mind is going to flash a light on that. And you are concerned right now. So I'll be concerned. This is something to be concerned about. And you are now more in control. And the research is fascinating on this stuff, really, guys. The research shows that the people who were more emotionally granular, they were like ninjas when it comes to their emotional vocabulary. They were able to detect their emotions at a lower degree. They didn't have to wait till they were red and hot and out of control. They were able to catch it early. They were able to intervene early. They were less anxious, they used less numbing behaviors, and they were able to find positive meaning in their negative experiences. And isn't that what we want? We want to know, what did we get? What lesson is here to teach me? What lesson is being taught to me through this experience? And people who were just more granular in their experience is what they were able to do this a lot more. And this is, again, why we have the board game where we have 50 emotions and all these granular ways of explaining certain things. And this is how you develop a child's emotional vocabulary. I've done many, many wrong things as a parent, and I will continue to do many wrong things every single day. Every single day I do something that I'm like, I hope nobody caught that. I am not This is definitely not going up as a proud moment. But there's one thing that I can say is that my kids did not throw tantrums. I had 4 kids. 4 out of 4 did not throw tantrums. They did not fuss. They did not, because I used my mirror and I labeled their feelings. The second you see a child acting out and say, woof, Salama, you are so angry right now, they stop screaming. They're like, okay, well, she at least understands that I'm screaming. Kids throw tantrums when they don't feel seen. When they want something and they don't feel you're hearing them, they will use their language. And their language is just to throw a fit because they get what they want out of that. So if you contain the emotions and you connect with them and you then redirect them, it is much more of a positive experience. Another great book, especially for young children, is going to be The Whole Brain Child. I love it. Great book. And then lastly, this is where we come in and we set limits. Okay. This is where you come in and say, okay, we're going to problem solve this thing. This is where you say anger is okay, but we've sat in it. We're in the thick of it. And then when you see a shift in their energy, you guys have been through very difficult things in your life. You wouldn't be sitting here. You've gone through difficult things. We don't just stay. We don't. There are periods where we do just say, okay, well, I'm done with that emotion. Now let me go find something else, right? So even the most devastating moments, the mind and the body will go through a valley and then it will come back up. You might not go up to a peak, but you come back out of that state. So the kids will go through that whole experience also. The more attuned you are, the more they'll be able to contain, and the more they'll be able to move out of that emotion, learn everything they can from it. And then we move into problem solving. That, you know what? I can understand why you're upset about that social media comment, but it is not within our value system to write negative messages, and how are we gonna deal with that? And so allow them to come up with some, how are you gonna apologize? Are you gonna comment? Are you gonna delete that comment? Are you gonna send her an apology? Are you gonna message her mom? Like, this is all gonna come from her. The older they are, the more they're able to do that on their own. If you are giving suggestions, even to little ones, because I told you, even my 5-year-old came up with a suggestion that she was just gonna take off the wet pajamas and then put them back on when they were dry. If she couldn't come up with something, I will ask her, do you want me to give my suggestions? And she would say, yeah. And then I would give my suggestion. So that always helps to just be able to give ask them, empower them to drive this process. That way you're teaching them to eventually advocate for your support. Like, mom, I need to ask you for you. I'm going through this difficult problem. Can you help me with that? And then that's basically what you're mirroring for them or modeling for them in that moment. They might give a solution that, you know what, I'm so angry with Johnny, I just want to go, one of the solutions is to go punch him in the face. Okay, well, that's a solution. We're going to write that one down, but we check all of our suggestions with our values. So we'll come back to that one. So write it down. Don't shut anything down. Let this be a process of discovery for her, that, you know what, that is a possibility, but we always check all possibilities with our values. Is this consistent with our values to punch Johnny in the face? Okay, well, that's not a kind thing to do. That is not a generous way of dealing with this. That is not a loving way of dealing. So these are all these values that are being triggered here. So probably not the option. But what other things you can do? Well, I can just stay away from Johnny until I'm calmer. Okay, that's a solution. Again, you're going to allow people to come up with this process. It does take time. John Gottman had a beautiful image. He said, imagine that you are creating a pearl necklace that you are going to give to your children when they go off to college. And each moment that you sit with them in this way, and I'm not saying that I do this every single time something happens in my family, by the way. There are times where I'm like, knock it off. Don't do that. This is not okay. That is not kind. Like, 4 children, business, COVID, I'm not going to have an opportunity every single time. But imagine that pearl necklace, that each time I have a moment like this with my child, I'm dropping a pearl into that necklace. And I weave a necklace. I weave it with these moments where I am having these conversations and I'm having these moments with my children. And when they go away to college or go away into their life, I give them these pearls and say, this is life. This is how you do life. So you look for these opportunities, you look for where you are inside of yourself, and then you say, you know what, let's have a conversation about this. Let's see what we can learn from this. So it needs to be a very thoughtful, conscious, deliberate coaching that is happening. Not every play, you know, when they're playing a game, the coach is not going to comment on every single play that happened in the game, but they will find the ones that really, you're like, this one, you could have gotten it in, or this is where you could have passed, and your team member would have made it in. Like, you look for those highlighted moments and you comment on those and you pull them aside, you go for walks, you spend time with them and say, this is life. So that's that. So let's test your skills a little bit. I know you guys can't respond. This is usually done in person, but okay. So just think about what you're going to say in your head. Your child comes home from school and says, I am never going back to school again. The teacher yelled at me in front of all my friends. What do you say? We don't have a chat box here. Let's see if you guys are answering anywhere. But what do you say, right? Usually we'll say something like, what did you do? Right? I can just hear that coming out of my mouth. What did you? Raise your hand if you would have done something like this. What did you do? Why is the teacher yelling at you? Yep, everybody's hands are being raised right now. Like, that's the first reactive response. Like, what did you do? Why did the teacher yell at you? So this is not what we want to do. So this is what happens when this is what I'm telling you, raising emotionally intelligent children is really hard work, guys, because our agendas, our personal triggers, you know, in the Arabic tradition and in the Islamic tradition, they say that you will be tested with your money and your children, because they really trigger our ego. Our fears are all front and center at that point, because you want your child to succeed. You want him to be liked by teachers. You're worried that if he keeps getting unliked by his teacher, he's going to get kicked out of school. He's going to be bad books of the teacher. He's never going to make it to college. He's never going to get a job. And that'll be the end of him. Like, we go from my teacher yelled at me as a 6-year-old all the way to him just being, not graduating from college. Like, we jump. And then we say, what did you do? We react. The better answer in this situation would be, well, first, it's important that we sit with the child's feeling. So I'm never going back to school. The teacher yelled at me in front of all my friends. So the child was humiliated. The child was sad. The child felt really embarrassed in front of all, because he didn't say my teacher yelled at me. If my teacher yelled at me, it would have been like, oh, you feel really upset about this. You feel really sad about this. You feel really hurt by this. But he said in front of all my friends. So there's an element of embarrassment and humiliation in there. So you want to get nuance again. So this was really embarrassing for you. You felt really humiliated. And the child would say, yeah, man. And she yelled at me. She didn't even take me aside. And you let him tell the story. You let him tell me what happened. That must have been so embarrassing for you. Tell me what happened. And then you start. But you first say, I see you. I see your pain. I got you. Instead of what did you do? And immediately you the child moves into, oh, I better make up a story because you're going to yell at me. And then there's no safety in that relationship. So let's try another one. So the bathtub, the kid goes, I hate my brother. I wish he were dead. What do you say? I can hear this also in me. That's a horrible thing to say. We don't hate in this house. You don't hate your brother. You love your brother. I don't want you to say that again. We don't, like, hate is just not a value we have in this house, okay? I think I actually did say this, to be honest. How many people would say something like this? We don't want to hate. You don't hate your brother. You love your brother. And the kid is like, I don't love him. My agenda is I want my siblings to get along. I don't know how long I'll be on this planet. When I'm gone, I want them to have each other. I want us to be a loving family. I want us to be like all the images on Instagram. I want us all to just get along with each other and never fight with each other. Okay, that's what I want. The child is feeling a lot of anger right now. The child's a hate is, he is now some agenda, some line has been crossed. Something really is upsetting him. You are so angry. You're so upset about this. Okay, we name the feeling. I know your brother can really make you mad and upset sometimes. What happened? Yeah, everybody's like, woof. You see how hard that is inside of you to hold your fear and your anxiety because your agenda is being challenged? Do you see that it's actually holding that and saying, I'm gonna come back to my fears. Let me be with my child. Let me be in this bathtub, hating my brother, wishing he was dead. What did that feel like? Oh, and there were days you hated your brother too. And there were days you wished him dead. And there were days you hated people that you loved and you wish them dead. And in those moments, you're just angry, you're hurt, you're disappointed, you feel betrayed, you feel let down, you feel something. Stay with that story. And then lastly, guys, you got to do your own work. I'm going to say it again. You got to do your own work. You've got to meditate. Month of February at the Lighthouse the theme is connection. And they asked me to give a quote for our Instagram. And I said, my connection to my world, to my life, to my children, to my feelings, to my goals, to my passion, all of that utterly and completely is related to how connected I am to myself. What helps me connect to myself? All the things you're seeing over there. Meditation, journal writing, insight-oriented therapy, solitude, nature, being alone, turning off your phone, not numbing your boredom, be bored, struggle, sit with the feelings, all of that. Actually, once you move through the boredom, then there's a portal inside of you. Through that portal, you connect to your source. We never make it past boredom. We're looking out the window, and then we're like, oh, I wonder what's going on. And next thing you know, off we go into another world. We are absolutely disconnected to ourselves. And that is what is happening around us in the world today. And that's why we don't have a lot of emotional intelligence. That's why we have high anxiety. That's why we have high depressions, because we're disconnected. And these emotions are here to tell us something is not right about the way we are doing things. And they're telling us that you need to come back home and pay attention to what's going on inside of you, because the way you're living your life is not according to what you wished you were doing. You're literally being led by technology. You're led by distractions. You're led by all of this other noise, and not by your values, your purpose, your truth, your center. You're not led by that. So another thing you can do, you can take a picture of this, keep an emotional log, like a diary. It can have information about your emotions, like, okay, when did that feeling start? How did you feel about having that emotion? That's what we call meta emotion. I felt really ashamed when I was angry. What about the anger made me feel ashamed? I yelled, I screamed, I totally lost control. And then you deconstruct and you deconstruct. I realized that there was a lot of shame that I felt when I was feeling some of these heavy feelings. I was full of shame because we just weren't supposed to feel. And, I'm a psychologist and I'm a girl and I'm a this and I'm a that, like all of these feelings, I'm full of shame, full of rejection of the true self. So conquering and working and moving and all of that reality was very, very important. And so oh, sorry, that's a typo again. Sorry, guys. Were other aware that you were having these feelings, or were you just so contained that you actually didn't, Nobody picked up on it. Nope, I had it under control. I would be really worried about you if you were that under control. If people don't know you're feeling certain feelings and you're really good at hiding your feelings, your body is going to come out and say no. The body will say no at some point. If you hold it, hold it, hold it. They call it a type C personality. It leads to cancer. These difficult feelings, especially grief, metastasize it. It becomes cancer. It becomes arthritis. It becomes autoimmune diseases. It becomes all of these anyways, you get what I'm saying. Endocrine diseases, thyroid disease, your throat chakra, all of that is linked to people holding too much, holding too much. And so there's a great book. It's called The Body Says No. Again, it's on my Instagram. I really would recommend that book. Please read that book, actually. It might inspire you if I have not already done so. And then, did you talk to anyone about the incident? Guys, we're not meant to do this stuff alone. Talk, show up to the support groups, talk about it with someone who can manage and contain and help you work through that. If you can't afford therapy, you don't have time for therapy, you can come for 1 hour, a month, to just give, some consideration to the world that is inside of you. Journal writing, I'm not one of those people that journal writes every day. I might write 2 sentences. I might write, this was really something I was thinking about today. Or I might write like 19 pages, on one day. For me, it really is a inspired process, but the journal goes everywhere I go. And whether it's a word, it's an image, it's a picture, it's a what, it gets dropped into that journal. So find a way to just express. You can dance, you can move, you can do yoga, you can do body work, you can do breathing, you can do journal writing. All of that is good, but get it moving. And then lastly, these are the Instagram channels that we contribute to. So for people who asked me about the emotional intelligence books, you see those 2 one is Lighthearted Parenting and one is Smart Heart Board Game. Follow those 2 accounts, and in the book section, we advise you on books and podcasts and things like that. These are vetted by me and my team of experts, of parenting experts. So we really I can show you, I have books and books and shelves of books, but I'm really thoughtful about the books I recommend, because some books are too heavy, some books are too confusing, some books are too dense. I'm not going to recommend those books. The books that are easy, that get the point across, they're all saying the same thing, but how are they saying it is very important to me. So I would really recommend. And there's a lot of books on the body and how the body keeps score, and the body never lies, and the body this and the body that. The best book so far that I have read, and I have read a lot on this body stuff, is When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate. And it is in my Instagram. And now I will take some questions. Can you say the names of the books? Somebody asked me that question. Let's see. Narcissism. By the way, these are all on my Instagram, or on the parents' Instagram. This is also a good one. This was the first book I ever read, Parenting from the Inside Out. I love that book. It changed my life, actually. So I love that book. I also love the book, The Soul's Code, but I'm warning you, he can get a little bit repetitive, but he turned me on my head with that one. He basically talks about how each child, how there's an acorn. The acorn comes with the blueprint of the oak tree. We don't program the acorn to come up with the oak tree. This little tiny acorn has the huge oak tree in it. So this little tiny person that we have, that is our child, has their whole sort of destiny programmed in their soul's code. That is their sort of DNA code, their soul code. And how, as a parent, can we nurture that? How do we become the child's spirit whisperer and say, what are you here to do in this world? Rather than be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a this, be a that, all the same, make lots of money, spend lots of money. This is not the soul's code. And this is where pathology comes in. This is when we say pathologies, it is really the definition of the word pathology is the soul in suffering. Okay. And so the soul suffers when we don't live our code, when we don't live out our destiny. So I'm going to put that one down too. I haven't recommended that one yet, but I will soon. Parenting. And then there was one other, okay, a whole brain child. And there was one other, oh yeah. I actually mentioned all of these in our Instagram, our parenting Instagram. Okay. Done. I did that one. Other questions? Good. So someone asked me, this is a really good question actually, that sometimes when I ask my daughter about her emotions, she doesn't want to talk in details or does not want to talk at all in this situation. She is 10. It doesn't work like that. Just like, you know, if my mother-in-law comes and sits down to me and says, I love my mother-in-law. I have a very good relationship with my mother-in-law. She's a very attuned and kind person, but I don't necessarily tell her everything about my life. She sees me, she knows me, we see each other, we live with each other. But I don't necessarily give her the nitty-gritty of my life just because I don't want to overwhelm her. If she comes and says, are you sad? Please tell me how you're feeling. I'm going to be like, we don't do that, right? I can take care of you. This is kind of not how it works. You have to have a trusting relationship where emotions are safe to be discussed. So where it is a culture to speak about something. So it really is very important for you to actually build a relationship with your child where there's a friendship there. In the Arabic tradition, they say, play with your child until they're 7, then teach your child from 8 to 14 or something. I don't know the ages, people give me different ages, but you get the point. And then from 14 onwards, befriend your child. I'm not saying you are your child's friend. No, my kids know that I am their mother and I am the keeper of this home, but the way I engage with them is the way I would engage with a friend. Hey, what are you doing today? What kind of music was that you were listening to? Or what book are you reading? I'm interested in their life. I'm interested in their sports. I'm interested in the teachers that, really get under their skin and the projects that they don't really like doing. I'm interested in the big, the irrelevant stuff. So when the stuff comes that it really needs to be discussed, and I'm doing all this emotional coaching in all this irrelevant stuff, perhaps. So when the time comes, they really can say, Mom, this whole teenage thing is really just getting me a bit loopy. And I say, yeah, it's a really difficult time and it's frustrating and. So if you don't know about the small stuff, they ain't gonna tell you about the big stuff. We've got to create a culture of friendship and openness and hanging out and knowing each other's stories. We can't just sit down and say, please tell me how you feel. I don't care if you're the mother, the father, or, some prophet that was sent by God to figure out the kid needs to warm up to you. And they're going to warm up to you if you actually have a friendship with them. So somebody said, tell me more. I don't know, tell you more about what? Yes, yelling is scary. Yes, overwhelmed is a good word. A lot of kids these days, guys, are so overwhelmed. The session will be recorded, or it was recorded, and it will be on my personal YouTube channel. So you guys can subscribe to that channel. I recently started it, and it will notify you when it's uploaded. Let's see. Welcome. I'm glad you guys found it helpful. Yes. There is no chat box. Sorry, guys. How do we balance or improve the disapproving of emotion style? I think this is really your inner work, right? If you are disapproving of emotions, you got to first understand why. What are you afraid of? I think when we think about negative or difficult feelings, we think that it is showing us that we did something wrong. You know, I remember that my husband would be like, oh, you know, I'm not really sure about these curtains. And I would take it so personally. Everything was personal because this house was my domain and I was supposed to get the curtains right and the carpet right and the, you know, the candle right. And for every single thing felt like a critique because that's just kind of how my type A personality upbringing was. And so softening into that feelings are just feelings. It has nothing to do with me. My job is the coach to help my child facilitate. And the more feelings, and you know, this is something I thought about more recently, that the more feelings we have, the bigger the portal to our soul is going to be. The whole range of emotions our kids have in small doses. This is what we say, we inoculate them, right? We give them small doses of emotions or small doses of vaccines in order for them to build an immunity towards that particular disease, right? Chicken pox, et cetera. Well, we want to do the same thing with emotions. We want to give them an immunity where we're giving them doses of these experiences. Don't come in and helicopter them out of that emotion. Don't come in and save the day. Don't come in and make them happy. Don't come in and solve their boredom. No, do it. Their children are less capable because we as parents are way too capable. So we just know better. We know better. We know faster. We do better. We do faster. And so children are ending up sitting back, cruising control through childhood. And then they get to adulthood and they're like, whoa, what just happened? This is not what I'm prepared for. You want to think about childhood as a mindset that you are preparing. These are training grounds for life. What experiences do I want them to have? And instead of the boardroom, it is actually the football team that my kid's hanging out with. How is he going to learn the skills to manage a boardroom through that? Instead of, you know, marriage, it's going to be the best friend that she got in a fight with. And those skills that she knows how to navigate and cope with that best friend relationship, rather than delete, I'm done with you, she's going to know how to do marriage. Because you can't be done and delete every single time you have a fight with your husband or wife, right? And so we learn these things in our childhood, and then we apply them in adulthood. We are learning all the beautiful things that school teach us, and reading and the writing and the math. We don't learn any of this stuff. We don't learn that it takes blood, sweat, tears, effort, hard work, struggle, rupture, repair, you know, again and again and again to make a relationship work. Nobody taught us that. We just saw it between our parents, but what did our kids see? Do they see that? Or do you just do it behind closed doors so they don't get affected, right? Do they, and that's fine, you shouldn't fight in front of your children, but I'm saying, do they see that in their own personal relationships, or they just delete their friend, or they think they have 700 friends and this is what it means to have a relationship? It's really skewing their idea, guys, as to what relationships are. Yes, I have a YouTube channel. Just Google Dr. Saliha Afridi and you will find it. Other things. How do you teach an adult who does that delete, who does that done and delete from family situations, chat boxes, etc.? I think you don't teach anybody anything. If they don't want to learn, you just have to tell them that this is just not okay with you, that you're not okay with this, that you wish that they didn't just delete, that you wish that they would allow for some conversation to happen, that you admit that you are not without fault. You admit that there were some things that you said were wrong, and that you're willing to fight and you're willing to work on this relationship. But it can't be that every single time that we have a fight that you just disappear for 5 days, like it just, or you disappear for 5 months or 5 years. So I think it's really about how good you are in navigating this space. The better you are in talking about what's in front of you, the more permission you give the other person to say, I never thought about it this way, actually. And a lot of us, there's another great book. Somebody asked me what the name of the book is so I can type, because there's no chat box here. There's another great book called Attachment. What's the name of the author? Actually, it's in my Instagram. You can look it up there. Attachment. Oh, I can't remember the name of the author. But Ariel. Yeah, that's the name of the author. Let's see. Attachment. I don't know, not The Little Mermaid. Anyways, that if you guys ask me, the name of the author is Attachment, Adult Attachment Styles. And so a lot of people who do this delete thing have an avoidant attachment style. And so what the name, okay, so this is the way the book looks. I really, really highly recommend this book, okay? It looks like that. It's called Attached. Okay, good. So someone said, I recently came across this, quit taking it Q-tip, which is quit taking it personally. Being dismissive of a child's emotions can be very defensive of our parenting. Absolutely, 100%. But we also need to know that we take everything personally, not just our child stuff. We just take the world personally. And so how do we stop? I mean, I actually think that if you are taking it personally, take it personally, but first understand why, right? Why is this so personal to me? Why does this bother me? What is this activating in me? What do I need to do with this energy? Because if it's hitting a wound, that means that wound needs to be healed. If it's hitting a nerve, that means I need to do something about this and go on that march and stand up for, this right. So why is it that I'm taking this personally is important for us to do our inner work, because it will go into the shadows where we make the unconscious conscious. If I just say, no, I'm not going to take it personally, moving on, you're dismissing your own emotions. Don't do that. When something hits personal, try to understand why this is personal for me. It hurts me that the world is hurting. I need to do something about this, and then do something about this. I was raised with the value that your problem is my problem and my problem is my problem. And, it really hits a nerve for me. Again, unpack it, get underneath it. Don't just quit. Figure, like I said, it's not meant to be a problem that we just quit or get over or get on with. We need to do our own inner work. So while you sit there and you feel the anxiety of you being a parent, while your child is really emotional and devastated because they just broke up with their girlfriend or boyfriend or best friend or whatever, you stay and you feel that. And you say, this is what it feels like to feel helpless in this moment. This is what it feels like to feel like I want to take my kids' feelings, all their pain away. Name it. Feel it, because it's opening up feelings inside of you that you haven't felt, that you quickly move out of and say, okay, let's problem solve this one. Emotions are the portal, guys. I'm telling you, if you want to know more about yourself, listen to the tiniest little whiff of an emotion that comes your way, that tells you what brings you joy, what hurts you, what breaks you, what excites you, what surprises you. The more you know you, the more you see it in other people, right? It takes one to know one. So the more nuanced I am about my scale, the more nuanced I will be in everyone around me. And I think, so that's it. So the person, Levine, Amir Levine, the author of the book Attached is Levine. So someone said, okay, this will be the last question. And guys, you guys can send me the rest of them on Lighthearted Parenting or Smart Heart Board Game. We'd be happy to answer them there. Somebody just called me a really good super nanny. You are the best super nanny. That's like a really great compliment. Okay. Thank you, guys. Okay, moving on. The question is, I always have good intentions, but I'm unable to stop reacting when my teen acts snarky. I'm doing a talk on how to manage teens on Mom's World Instagram account live tomorrow at 11 a.m. So I will answer that question there. I will take a question. I will take a picture of this. So you have to dial in tomorrow to Instagram Mom's World. I will post it on my stories just to let you guys know. But yeah, she said she acts snarky, and then I end up saying, why are you being so disrespectful? This is what I mean by emotional regulation. This is the difference between reacting and hold, and responding. I see that you're really upset right now. I'm just gonna take some time to go cool off before I say something. You're really upset. Maybe you should go cool off, and then we'll come back and talk later. I might do something like that. But I see that you're upset. I see that you're hurting. I'm with you. How can I make this easier for you? I'm with you. I'm sitting with you. I'm in it with you, rather than don't be disrespectful. Then once I'm done, and if I'm really hot, if like she comes at me with something, I might actually say, just, can I have 2 minutes? I'll be right back. And I'm going to go cool off. And I cool off every part of my body. And then I come back and I say, okay, you're really upset. You're really overwhelmed. I can see that you're really angry. Okay, tell me about what's happening. Tell me what's going on. That's always a good answer, like question to start with, like, tell me what's going on. Tell me what's going on with you. And so you say, okay, tell me what's going on with you. And they say this, that. Once they're done telling you everything and they're like, okay, now I'm relaxed, you say, you know what? We're going to work on, I know you were really upset, but those things you said were really hurtful. And I actually don't use the word disrespectful, because I find that it triggers kids. It's very shaming. They really would have to do something very disrespectful in order for me to say disrespectful. I just say, it hurt me. I felt disrespected. I felt like you didn't value me in that moment. I felt like you didn't care how I felt in that moment. It felt like that. I know you don't mean that, but it felt like that to me. And so, you know, we need to find a better way that when you're that hot in the head, that you go cool off and then we talk about it. But I'm with you. I feel you. I know this is hard, but we've got to find a better way to do that. Do you have any thoughts on that? And then they might say, well, actually, maybe I'll go cool off before I talk. So again, this is about not shaming them and saying, listen, I lose my lid all the time when I'm hot in the head. This is what works for me. You're going to lose your lid all the time. I have my third one going into these teenage flares. And I was like, listen, my son, listen, my baby, you're going to really have to get it together, because he's the one who's most like me. I was like, you're going to be like an unguided missile shooting everywhere and without target. Like, you've got to find a way to manage this, and I will help you in whichever way I can, but I've got to have you do the lifting too. So I did come at him like that when he like lost it the other day, and I was like, I sat with him. I loved him. He cried. I hugged. We loved. There was no shaming, but there was this idea that you have a superpower here. You feel with full intensity. You feel so much. Guess what? When that feeling is anger, you're like a volcano that erupts. And so we're gonna have to cool off the volcano so you don't erupt all over the people and, like, you know, the whole town goes, you know, annihilate the whole town next to you, because this is his intensity, which is what my intensity used to be. And so, yeah, and that's kind of how we talked about it. And so I think it teaches them. There's a teaching moment there. I did get a pearl for that one. And that's that. Mom's world. Mom's world tomorrow. All right, guys. Somebody said that us British, we don't have emotional intelligence. Americans have more emotional intelligence because we are encouraged to have a stiff upper lip. You know what? I'm going to give this to my partner at the Lighthouse, because we always talk about the British versus the Americans, because she's from Scotland and I'm from the US. And we always like fought over like how we would spell center and like how vocal I am and how, you know, composed she is and like, you know, all of that. So I will share this feedback with her or thoughts with her. that I'm not the only one that seems to think so. But yeah, of course, this is how, you know, the US school system is different from the British school system. The US school system has school counselors, and the British school systems don't usually have school counselors, and emotions are just part and parcel of the way things are. Maybe not so much in the British school system. British, you know, they go from this whole, you know, centuries worth of this stiff upper lip, as you said, where Americans are maybe not that much. Maybe Americans are a little bit too much. Maybe the British need to be. So somewhere in the middle is the good stuff. And so we don't want to be too loud and too out of, you know, emotional, but we don't want to be that either. And so we want to have a healthy balance of regulation and emotions and things like that. So, all right, guys, I've got to go now. So please send me your questions. Please, please, please send me all your questions about teenagers for tomorrow's Instagram account, tomorrow's Instagram live that I will be doing at 11 a.m. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye, guys.